Okay, welcome back. We're about to enter the Matrix. What episode is this now? I don't even know. We've done so many.
23.
23. Enter the Matrix number 23. Back with
23rd
my
time.
new and improved microphone, courtesy
Here we
of
are.
Nikolai. Yes. How are you doing today?
Excited. I'm back in Montenegro, and I'm looking at the stunning view out of my window. I'm looking at Adriatic Sea and the Boca Bay, and yeah, it's
This goes
feeling
to
feeling
tell you
awesome.
how you can shape two different experiences. We are both in Montenegro. Your view is of the Adriatic Sea. Mine is of a concrete wall.
Here you go. Yeah. Well, as you know, we chatted about in an Atman alignment course. It's like people can be in two same environments and perceive it completely differently, and even structure it completely differently, right?
Yep. Yep. So that's going to shape today's topic, actually. Um, and previously we were chatting, and I was kind of laughing in some ways internally on how a lot of what we were talking about at the end sort of maps onto what I had thought about for today's episode. And what I wanted to talk about were signs of spiritual growth. Like what are the
Mm.
the true signs, and sort of what are the false signs, and what's right, what's wrong, and what's leading people astray. So the first thing I wanted to go into is like, okay, what are, from your perspective, and through Atman's perspective, what are the signals that you're on the right path spiritually? Like what becomes the metaphorical GPS that starts to light the way?
I love the question. I don't know how you come up with these questions, but this is a really good question. Um, I would start in slightly different place, and something as you started speaking about this, something else came up,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a recent realization because um, we observe a lot of people. Like we track quite a few people, and we understand where their souls are from, and we observe their life as through acquaintances, through friendships, through like hangouts like we organize in Slovenia, right? We interact with a lot of spiritual practitioners that work with other people, right? So there's like a lot of data points, and it's interesting. We have a Excel spreadsheet that was around 500 souls that we are kind of tracking is the wrong word because it sounds like we're like CIA, spiritual CIA, you know, we're just aware of, and somehow those people come and go from our field. So we have different data points where they're in life, where they're in spiritual journey, what they're facing, what modalities they're using, what challenges they're experiencing. So it's actually really fascinating. I can't even call it work. And now it's my lifestyle. It's so interesting to observe so many different people and their journeys. And where I was going was this: the big drastic thing that I've started noticing over the past months or two is there was this first, let's call them first batch of awakened avatars or people, and they're like and they have a predisposition of different spiritual superpowers like healing others, seeing energy, being psychic, mediums, and etc. So let's think of them of this first cohort that got awakened, and the reason I put awakened in quotes is is where I'm going with this explanation. So they got this boost by being exposed to all different types of spiritual modalities. I don't know, maybe traveling to India ashrams, by like doing all types of rituals and etc. And watching that, observing that cohort now, they really got stuck because for many reasons. So like they're kind of on a surface seems spiritually advanced, because some of them, for example, been exposed to spirituality. Let's say they're in like their mid 30s to mid 40s, and some of them were exposed to spirituality from being children, being like 10 years old, and their whole life spirituality was part of their life. And I know some of those, like there's some of those examples are among these people that are friends or in our circles. So what's interesting there, where I'm going with this, there is this perception if you have some kind of spiritual superpower activated that you're spiritually advanced, which we've consistently seen not being true. So it's like a illusionary symbol. So I'll give you an example. Like some people can heal people, right? And they can heal them like it activates from like, I don't know, being young or whatever. And they heal the cat and then they heal the aunt and then whatever. And the perception is you're spiritually advanced. In reality, that is actually not true. Uh, that is more of an indication that they're incarnation program is designed to be a healer, and hence that capability was sitting on the surface, kind of like oil in Saudi Arabia. You just need to poke your finger into the sand and oil starts coming out. So there is a whole group of spiritual practitioners that had that type of incarnation program. Their superpowers of mediums, healers, seers, blah, 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 the list goes on, was right on the surface. So you just needed a small increase in vibration and it activates. And another small increase in vibration, it gets better and stronger. Another small increase in vibration, it gets better. And the perception is they got advanced. In reality, they did not get advanced. It's just that's how incarnation program was designed. You're supposed to be a healer. Hence, of course, your soul will design in a way that capability activates early. So you're not spending, 30 years of your life to get to the oil, get to the gold. And that creates a very dangerous trap for those practitioners because there's like, look, I'm a great healer. Hence, I'm spiritually advanced. But then the question I ask them is, well, let's look at the rest of your life. Let's look at your material state. Let's look at your relationships, like romantic relationship, family. Let's look at your friendships. Let's look at your own health. And in most of the scenarios, those aspects of life are suffering, like most of them actually. Like I know some really great practitioners who can't figure out money at all. And so know some great coaches. And the funny thing, some of them will coach on the topics of relationships. Their relationships are garbage. Their families like in shambles, right? You look at some great practitioners, look at their children, the upbringing is backwards, is like very inharmonious. So where I'm going with this, the best indicator and or symbol of spiritual growth is harmony in every aspect of life. And that's because that's in like that's an easy indicator that anyone can easily measure no matter what their capabilities are. You just observe a person and observe their how they handle, how they carry themselves in every aspect of life. Their work, their family, their romantic relationship, and etc. And that's why I think if you take all these aspects to truly reach that like high vibrational level is a lot of work. And what I've seen is like as I was going through those stages, right? Like Nikolai got pretty harmonious of being with himself, and I thought, fuck, I'm the shit. I've nailed this spirituality, and my spiritual ego got so big. I was like walking around, I'm the guru of the gurus, right? And then I started re-engaging creating a business, right? Atman. And I realized that my spiritual growth and development was nicely shielded in the vicinity of Nikolai's living room. And then I started realizing, holy fuck, how much more I have to unpack, right? Because now I'm like becoming more social, I'm facing more situations and scenarios, creating a team, blah, blah, blah. So then I learned how to navigate that. And I was like, now I've clearly hit the mark of being top spiritual person, right? And then universe, of course, brings completely different situation, and you're like, whoa. And so it's funny. It's like um, from from the world that I grew up in, or I guess most of us grew up in, where everything is like goal oriented targets and etc. I was always trying to measure myself against others, how developed and etc. I was in spirituality, uh, just to realize every time I felt like, okay, now I'm at 9 out of 10, and then a new situation would come to life. Then I would be like, I feel like I'm more 3 out of 10. And there's like this reset of the scale. And then I would again do a lot of work and like try a lot of modalities, heal myself, do this. And then I was like, now I'm finally at 9 out of 10. And then another situation comes in and you're like, maybe 3.5, 4 out of 10. So, and that's why I landed in on the fact that as you can maintain peace and harmony in every aspect of your life, that is the indication of spiritual, the level of spiritual development.
It's funny that you mention it that way because I said something similar about my time in the adult business, like, because it was really your and my arc are very similar in that respect. It's like I became the top dog really fast. It's like, I'm the best really quick and I can do this. And especially before the drugs, it's like, if I wanted to, I could pretty much make any guy
Yeah.
fail beside me pretty much if I wanted. And, so you're like, "Oh, I'm so good." And then, it's like, "Okay, I've seen so much. I understand so much."
Huh.
And then, of course, you get some energy, or you'd be faced to deal with some type of woman, and you're like, "Oh my god, I know nothing." Like, okay, like every time I thought, "Oh, I know everything about sex," I'd find something new. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm 3 out of 10. It's just like what you're saying. Or then I understand women's psychology, and then I get something, I'm like, "Oh, fuck, I thought I knew everything. I know nothing." So it's funny to see how two different people, different backgrounds, different industries, same arc of what do I really know? Like, and so I pretty much gave up at the point saying, you know what? I I'm done asking the question or pretending that I know everything, because every time I've said that, there's been something new, and I'm like, nope, I thought I saw it all. Nope, this is new. This is it. So I think it's almost, I believe it is limitless. I don't think there is ever an end. It just keeps going on to infinity in some respect.
Yeah, and that's this whole universe, right? You can continue evolving until you become your own universe, and that is the case. And one more thing I wanted to add, I see like these almost uh, big themes in a spiritual development. The
Hmm.
first one is finally becoming at peace with yourself and who you are. The next one is becoming at peace with who you are in, let's call it, a society. By society, I mean usually you would express yourself because everybody here to create something, and hence you start creating, and then you usually create it with someone involved. Even if you're like a solo creator, there's always like you still have, let's say, an accountant to do your taxes or whatever, right? So it creates a team, and
Yeah.
it's a next level where now you have to integrate into the team and how you interact with them. Is it constructive, not constructive, harmonious, not harmonious? And then it gets a little bit more advanced, and the next theme is how do you do in a romantic relationship? And romantic relationship is like, I'd say, is one of the hardest, but I think, and those two I would put probably equally on the same spot of the hardest test of your spiritual development is a romantic relationship and family. And I mean like your parents. But at the same time, the reason I put them in kind of in the same bucket because they're kind of two different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Parents for me was the most advanced test of my spiritual development. Like naturally, so they live in Turkey and they retired, so I go visit them a couple times a year. And to me, that would be the most advanced spiritual retreat. I would show up there and I would observe uh, how much time I could stay at peace. Because, and what's interesting, energetically, it makes sense because when souls incarnate, they incarnate with other souls that they have contracts with. We've talked, I think, 2 episodes ago about that. And hence, usually the family, your parents, become those people that push you the hardest for the evolution. So hence, when you come to the field of parents, they they say, people say they subconsciously know where all your buttons are and press all your buttons. In reality, it's by design. So that's why, at least for me, that was like that's one of the most advanced tests of your spiritual growth and development. If you can spend a week or two uh, with your family and stay at peace and come out like smiling and happy, you've done something right. And then the second one is romantic relationship. Can you be in a romantic relationship in a very constructive and retain that peace and harmony, and always turn it to be constructive, rather than ultimately land in a place where two people are screaming at each other, and it becomes more destructive rather than constructive.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I remember, and it's actually improved. So clearly, I'm on a higher spiritual growth. But I remember over time as I got, I'd say more connected with myself, more grounded with myself. Like I would notice when I would visit with my mom, like we could extend the trip longer because I remember before it was
Yeah.
like the cutoff was 14 days. It was like we'd be at like day
Yeah.
13,
Yeah.
it's great. Day 14, oh, like done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, yeah, I can go past 3 weeks kind of easy. And it's like it's shifted where, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. It's not where I'm looking at her like a child, but it's like there's just a different energy where it's like she'll do something that maybe 20 years ago would just set me off, and now I just kind of laugh at it. It's like, okay, here,
Yeah.
like it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't trigger me anymore. I'm like, okay, no problem. Like I'm so calm and centered. Like, okay, mom, we'll solve this stuff. It's okay. I know how you are, and that's not
Yeah. Yeah.
changing, and I'm okay. Like, yes, you're not a problem. So it's interesting just to see that shift. And I'd say for me, where the parents definitely were younger, I would say for sure now my highest spiritual growth has always been in romantic relationships. Because if I look over the last 20 years, I mean, my God, I've had some volatile ones, and it's gotten so much better. But it still definitely is, my partner is the one that can certainly set me off, trigger, or cause um some change in the system, or cause some strife that it's like, okay, like why is this happening? And I gotta try and figure it out. Like what's the shift? What's the energy here? What is the, like you would say, what is the thing that I need to look at? Why is this
Yeah.
pattern repeating? What's going on? So for me, that's definitely been the biggest area for me. But I can definitely relate to the parent thing because I feel like the parent one I've overcome
Yeah.
pretty much. I mean, me and my mom can talk for a long time, and all the stuff that she may say that the old version of Mitch would be like, "What the fuck are you talking about, mom?" I'm like, it's all good. Like I'm so at peace with her, which is interesting. So
Yeah, and I think as you're chatting about this, it kind of does work out kind of that way, where first you find a way to be at peace with yourself, then whoever you're co-creating with, your, let's say, call it professional social expression. The beauty there, you only interact. Well, not the beauty is not the right word. The reason it works that way, in that scenario, you only interact with those people. Uh, um, Touching on only few types of energies because you're there to co-create some kind of project, right? Then the family you're related with, and you touch on many more energies. And then romantic relationship, you're there to co-create life, meaning children, family, a unit, right? That touches on every possible energy. So that, let's call it test, I'd say is the most advanced test. And coming back to your original question, people who figure out all these aspects and can constructively and harmoniously live in all these aspects of life, those are the indicators of high spiritual development. And what's interesting, some people that achieve those might not even have a single might not even might have not read a single spiritual book or went anywhere. They just done. Some people do it intuitively. With that said, I also want to add a clause or caveat here. Everybody's incarnation program is very different, and I hear this very often. I was just literally had a conversation on Monday with a friend who'll be watching this. Hello to him. Uh, we had this conversation extensively with him. He goes like, I look at my friends and they already made a family and it kind of works and life is fine and works. And I was like, your soul is old and advanced. Your incarnation program is exactly accordingly more advanced. And as a result, the ask of you is substantially more than of a younger soul. So where I'm going with this whole scale that we described here, you might like look at a young soul and most of their life will be peaceful and quiet, but also will be quite uneventful. They live in the same town that they haven't moved from. They married a girl they met in a high school, and they have kids. And yeah, they're growing. They're learning. They're evolving. But for a younger soul, usually the younger soul chooses a simpler incarnation program there where they're learning one or two energies. The more advanced soul is like, I'm going to learn 15, 20 energies. Let's go, you know? And that's why it's like comparably you might, wow, this person is highly spiritually developed. Some of them will be just young souls with very simple incarnation program. But so you have to compare apples to apples. So when I talk about those things, I talk about life for large advanced souls. Hence, when you got all these aspects of life really figured out, that means you've learned and you've evolved a lot.
You know, it's funny when you mention that, the picture that I got was a cow eating grass. Just a simple life, right? That's it. Chew some grass, beautiful sunset in the background. Life is peachy, right?
Well, one of those, and it's interesting you bring up this image. That insight landed deeply for me when I was living in Bali, and I observed. I had some rice paddies in front of my villa, and I observed the rice farmers extensively because I was learning to be at peace without doing anything. So biggest challenge was to sit by the pool and do nothing, not read a book, not look at a phone. It's the fucking hardest thing I've done in my
Oh
life.
God,
And
yeah.
people laugh at me. And I was like, just wait. Try. That's the hardest retreat you can ever do. And so I was sitting there, and hence the only thing really I had is watching birds land on the rice, and this farmer jump out of rice and whistle and scream at birds so they fly away, and that's what he would do day in day out for. And I watched the full rice cycle, from like dirt to full whatever rice plants, and then being cultivated and then being harvested. uh, and so I watched these guys literally jump out and whistle and scream at the birds, and that's what they would do in like for years, right? Well, and I watched a single cycle, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on? How is this person not bored?" Right? But it's a younger soul that develops specific quality, and then that scenario could be a quality of persistence or quality of repetition or whatever it is, and hence assumingly that person could come home and everything would be still and easy and simple, like it's a woman he married who he met in the same village when he was like 5, and etc. So hence it's very important to compare apples to apples. You cannot take advanced soul and compare it to a rice farmer, or let's say, let's not point to the avatars themselves, a younger soul. So hence in this scenario, if you take another advanced soul, and where I want to take this. So coming back to that comment I made, the conversations that we have with a friend, um, where he would like go, well, why can't I just find a partner? Why can't I find a wife? And it's like sometimes there would be a frustration, right?
Mm.
And I'll be like, listen, you're an advanced soul. You can create a union also with an advanced soul. So that means you in this avatar have a lot to learn to synchronize fully with your soul and spirit. And the partner who you can create a union with is an advanced soul who has to go through this advanced program as well. Takes much longer. And in a moment, it might feel very frustrating that it doesn't seem like you're making strides. But in reality, in this scenario, going slow is really going fast, by meaning like it's almost where and of course our soul and spirit and the matrix is trying to prevent us from jumping into something that will not be a fit, because like once again, if we're talking about small big souls, we've chatted about this in an episode about relationships, right? If you try to create a union, big soul tries to create a union with a small soul, small soul starts burning, big soul starts degrading. So you've jumped the decision prematurely. That thing will fall apart sooner or later, because it's just not, the union is not in harmony. So by almost not ending up in a relationship, it seems like comparably, let's say, to others, you're behind, but you're further ahead because you have to actually complete the right steps so that you can create a harmonious union. And once you create that harmonious union, that will be, not only you'll experience even a deeper states of joy, happiness, peace, harmony, and etc., but that's also starts serving as a good example around. And so far, this planet does not really or barely has good examples of harmonious unions of advanced souls, because the planet existed, as we previously discussed, under this management of lower vibration civilizations. And what has been kind of the only thing that kind of worked, dominant partner and submissive partner. So big soul, smaller soul, one dominates, and people were just like, okay, that's how it is. And they
Mm,
just succumb to this, let's call it a subpar union. And we're only, the planet is only emerging to a place where the union of two powerful souls can be created. And the reason, of course, this was prevented, because when this union is created, that's literally the next level of embodied God. That through that type of union, you can do things energetically in the material world. Like it's you get to a very advanced level of magic where you influence the world um, so heavily and at such advanced level that whoever those civilizations that managed the planet previously, they were so afraid of that, so created whatever they could for those things not to happen, because all of their systems automatically break and cannot influence that union, because it becomes so sovereign and so powerful that you cannot manage them. And whereas those civilizations wanted a civilization and a population that are easy to manage, that are we live right now and today in a civilization of slaves. Nothing has
mm,
changed. It just
yeah.
the form of slavery has changed. And it's funny. We just had a conversation about this with Maxime a few days ago. At least when the person was a straight up slave, they were fed and taken care of, because ultimately you have to maintain your slave for the slave to perform the work. Now it's a self-driving slave. You go do the work, you take that money, you feed yourself, you pay for the roof over your head, you pay for everything, you pay for healthcare, you pay for food. So yourself, yes, you have a perception that you have more choices, which slavery of work to do or not to do. And it's interesting. I remember my time in Silicon Valley. I was a very fucking advanced slave. It's like, I run the world because I built this company, I raised this money. But I really look honestly at my life. I had zero free time. I couldn't create a proper harmonious relationship, because like that building that and running that company consumed most of my time. I couldn't start a family because and I know a lot of people who have families and relationships, but they're so consumed by their work. They're slaves to the game they chose to play, and it's Silicon Valley game. Like it's a dick measuring competition, right?
Yeah.
Bigger valuation, bigger company, more employees, Oh, my company is $2 billion. Oh, mine is $10 billion. Now with AI, everything got accelerated. $1 billion company is a joke. Like, why would I even invest in this? Oh, unless it became $1 billion company in 12 months. So where I'm going with this now, there's just, you have illusionary free will in which type of slavery we're going to participate. And I'm going to tie this to another conversation I had recently. Um, and I started realizing, like, a conversation was about upbringing children. And when I was running a company in San Francisco, I was trying to figure out how I'm going to fit into my schedule upbringing children. And then I realized it's kind of almost impossible. You hire a nanny or you hire two nannies, plus like a nanny plus a maid, like you, and usually they're like both partners are top performing, illusionary top performing professionals
Hmm.
working at least 8 to 12 hours a day. And nannies are the ones that grow in children and bringing up children, right? And yes, you give them high quality time. You've allocated in your schedule the weekend. Saturday is non negotiable family time, and 1 hour or 2 hours every evening, and no negotiable time. And those are, by the way, excellent parents in the today's society. Some of them just don't give a shit. They see a child and it's like, I'll see you, whatever, maybe in a month. I already have so much headache from work. I don't want to hang out with you. So where I'm going with this is, so now they pay a price late down the road when that kid grows up and becomes an adult and then decides to be transgender or decides to fucking become a drug addict, and you have to, now you manage the results of your upbringing, but you didn't really bring up that kid. It was a random Mexican nanny or Filipino nanny, right? So coming back to that, uh, to the thought, I was like, wow, that would have been my family, but now my life is designed in such a way where I only do things that make me happy. Like, I would not record this podcast if I was not excited to record this podcast. If the energy was not there, I will not do a session with a client if I'm not excited to work with that client and do that session. I will not sit down and write a book or create a new module or whatever unless there is foundational energy of happiness and excitement to do that. As a result, most of my schedule is, a lot of my week is unstructured, so I can do whatever excites me the most. Of course, there's a bunch of scheduled sessions and like podcast recording and etc. With that said, like, there are times where like, hey, it doesn't seem like it's happening this Wednesday,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
move it or let's not do it. Where I'm going with this, to summarize it, was like, bringing it to this upbringing a child, I was like, wow, now I finally have a foundation where I can do that, because there is enough free space in my schedule, in my energy, in my emotions, in my mind, where I could dedicate it to creating new life and upbringing that new life and sharing the wisdom, the knowledge, and actually have excitement to do that. So yeah, I'll pause here, and that's where the summary of that is: majority of people are just still stuck in slavery, and that's another indication of spiritual development. As people spiritually develop, they learn to balance all aspects of life, and they learn to balance energetic world or spiritual world and material, because it's the same coin, two different sides. And right now, a huge chunk of the world got stuck in only world of forms, one side of the coin. But then
hmm,
we had this, let's call it, uh, emergence of spiritual people who give middle finger to the other ones and vice versa, right? Oh, I'm spiritual. But for the life of theirs, they cannot manage their material world anymore. And it kind of becomes funny. It's like, you've been material for most of your life, and then you go here, you completely forget this part. But the idea is to integrate both, and then you find the harmony. There's neither side is right or wrong. Is just a um, a more wholesome experience when all of these, when spiritual and material gets integrated, and then when all aspects of a human life, which is life in this body, which, you have your solo time, you have your co-creation time with your colleagues, then you have your time with your parents slash extensive family, and then you have co-creation of life and family with your romantic partner.
It's funny when you were talking about the upbringing of children piece, and I immediately thought of Kim Kardashian. And the reason I'm saying that is I remember it was so pronounced when I saw it. And I remember she's at some function and she's parading her new child Northwest, right? Remember that? And it was like the child was simply there as a prop for the photo op.
Yep.
The child did not actually exist. It was just her, and it was like, this is the prop so you can think I'm great,
Checkmark
I'm this,
family.
but yep, take my photos. And it was so transparent when I watched it, and I said, wow, that's a pretty fucking evil woman right there, right? Like, you hear we're peddling our child for Instagram so that
Yep.
we can get more likes, more subscriptions, more attention, more. Kid did not absolutely exist in her world. So it was kind of funny that you brought up that.
Well,
Um,
that brings me to somebody we worked with, and this person, if this person watches this episode, hello to them. And that was one of our uh, the conflict that we reached in our work. He, I still believe his children are predominantly props in his cool life, and there was no really reason for him, nor neither for us, to continue that work unless we could get through that, because it's foundational. You don't have child to have a pet. Child is not a dog. Well, most of the population luckily chooses to have pets now, and the reason I say luckily, because they're self-selecting themselves out of this evolutionary process. It's like, clearly what they should be taking care of is only pets, and that's fine. But ultimately, and with that said, rushing into having children, what I'm also realizing is also a mistake. Like, if I had children from my last marriage, holy fuck, that would be an experience backwards from what I'm realizing now, right? And in the
mhm.
past, we somehow, to be honest though, sometimes I say, well, we somehow grew up in a Belarusian village and we turned out okay. But growing up in Belarusian village, most of the stuff we're discussing right now was not a thing. The life was very simple. There's a fucking forest. There is a stick that's your toy, and there are other children, and there are two genders. There's not really a TV. There's some cartoons, but yeah, the TV is emerging, but you're excited to watch it, but not as excited to watch. You don't have a cell phone. You kind of watch, and because it was not like, what is it called, stuff where, like Netflix, where it's on demand TV, right? You know that the good cartoon is only on Saturday at 8 a.m. That's the only thing you watch. Otherwise, you're playing with a stick in the forest, interacting with other kids.
And you've got your cucumber and your bottle of vodka. Let's go.
Exactly. And at that, and like, if you're hungry, you literally go to a garden, either your garden, pull a tomato, pull out a carrot and eat it, or you go to neighbor's garden. And sometimes, or actually a lot of time, when you see that another neighbor or person you don't know has some tasty apples that your garden doesn't have, then you get into a little bit of trouble. You climb the fence and get the apples you want, and then you hope you run faster than their dog or the guy who is throwing something at you and screaming at you. So and somewhere along the way we lost most of it, and there are, like, I'm pretty sure there's still pockets of that exist on the planet, but with the technology that now permeates life everywhere, even if you're in Belarusian town of 6,000 people, and that's where I grew up, technology is there, and the kid is not playing in the same forest that I played. He's sitting on his Android phone and, like, playing some virtual games with some kids across the globe. Yeah, there are benefits to that, but then they're exposed to all that, to all the messages that being distributed that start confusing kids very early on. And what's interesting, I'm having more and more of these conversations with just random people I meet. They're talking about their children. They're talking about just what's happening in the world, and it's not pretty, but I think there is hope, because there is a group of people realizing that well, and there is also now backlash happening, even with, like, Republicans in US trying to bring back some of the original traditional values. Not that I'm promoting Republicans, because that's just a subset. They're still, if you look at them, they're as corrupt as Democrats, and at the end of the day, they're like, it's illusionary game. Oh, we'll protect traditional values and these things that are, guys, important to you, but we'll still continue enslaving you, meaning you'll pay tax. We're going to spend it on wars all around the world. We're going to spend it on super overpriced infrastructure. So it's like, okay, we'll give you 2 out of 10, but 8 out of 10 will still screw you on. So that's where we are right now, civilization. And with that said, it's falling apart very, very rapidly, and that's exciting.
It's interesting. You talking about like just how society is changing and the kids. I can't remember, and I wanted to research his name right now because I know it starts with a B. That I think he was part of KGB, and he did an interview in the '80s about how the
Hmm.
the the parts of, like, the I don't know if he would say it was the system. It was the certain ideologies behind the communism, how, like, the goal was over 50 years or 60 years, you start spreading it and you eat a country from within. And
Hmm.
he was explaining in an interview how
Yep.
this
I
was
think I've
the.
I've seen this that interview.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. I
Yeah,
just,
he
for
was
the life of me,
ex-KGB who basically moved to US and
yes,
seek political protection, and yeah, and they basically said a bunch of communist concepts were integrated into US 50 years ago, and now the seed finally grown that ate
yes,
up. And I wouldn't, by the way, I wouldn't call it communist. It was probably more socialist.
yeah,
And of course, like, all these terms are so misdefined right now. But yeah.
yeah. So it's just interesting to kind of think about that from that perspective. One thing I wanted to ask you, because we had touched on it briefly, where you were talking about union of, say, for example, advanced souls, where you have either two advanced souls, or before you would have like a smaller soul and a more advanced soul.
Yeah.
But how would you go about measuring that to say, like, okay, you know what, here's this individual,
Hmm.
maybe I'm planning about a union, or I'm looking for that, and knowing that you were somewhere on the same level of soul? Or how
Yeah.
do you determine, even if you have two advanced souls, like, is there a sliding scale where one is more advanced than the other? Or once you are advanced, everybody who's advanced is of a specific size? How does that work?
Um, so there's not, well, you can kind of, when you see, when you have your ability to see energy activated, when you have your ability activated to see energy and also read Akashic record and read collective field of consciousness and etc., then you can kind of see the souls. Um, and you kind of can see how advanced they are. There's also another metric. We can measure how old the soul is. But that does not necessarily indicate their advancement, because there could be two souls that are 5 million years old, but one will be substantially more advanced than the other one, because one managed to learn more evolutionary lessons in 5 million years versus the other. And the way it incarnated, where in universe it incarnated, like uh, kind of same amount of time, but one, let's say, is 50% bigger than the other one because the evolutionary path happened to be things happened to align more where the soul landed in the right sector of universe, and it figured out how to interact with the energies of that sector universe right away. Hence, that evolutionary experience got registered because the soul expands as evolutionary experience integrates and registers, right? So the years is not really a direct metric. So the best metrics is for whoever can kind of see energy, see those souls. They can kind of feel. Generally, they'll feel the size comparatively, I guess. And at the end of the day, it's like it's comparative. You like we don't measure it in liters, and maybe there is a way to measure that we haven't looked into and we haven't figured out yet, and pretty sure it will be figured out. The most, I guess, the idea here is, of course, to share practical knowledge so that people can apply it in their day to day. And the practical approach to measuring the soul, and I wouldn't even talk about measuring here. The best is to just surrender to what Matrix offers relationship wise. And the relationship that's supposed to lead to creating the union and the family um, will be that for advanced souls. And now, especially where the planet is heading to, previously it would have led to creating a union with big soul, small soul. That's what was energetically allowed. But now we consistently see those relationships either that were created previously either falling apart, even if people were married, sometimes had kids, and etc. And there is this let's call it defragmentation or reharmonization that's happening that ultimately will lead of creation of these unions of powerful souls. So one, where I'm going with this, basically faith and trust, follow the path, and your soul is trying to take you there because that's where you also receive the highest amount of evolution, because soul and spirit are optimizing for highest amount of evolution. But the simple metric that I've started observing is more advanced souls have very uh, intense, maybe not the right word, but I'll use intense lives. And what I mean by them, they're very, here, the right word is saturated lives, saturated with experiences. And like a few months ago, I went on a few dates, and let's call them, I haven't specifically looked at how advanced the souls are. There's just other reasons why I went on those dates. But let's say those souls are closer to younger to medium advancement, right? Their lives are very simple. You know, they graduated from university, they had 2-3 jobs. And when we talk, it's like, yeah, I graduated from university and then I got a job. And you're like, well, and I'm like sharing all these stories that happened with me and all the insanity of like starting businesses, going bankrupt, you know, crazy relationships, crazy travel. And they're like, yeah, I graduated university, I got a job. And the craziest thing that happened, I got promoted. And I was like, right? And I'm like sitting there and I'm like trying to tease out those like more events, right? Because they make a great Netflix movie, I guess, at least in a conversation, but they're not there. Those events are not there. So the life is less saturated. So the advanced souls, because they want to have maximum amount of evolution, the life becomes quite saturated, quite eventful. So that's another way. And one more thing I'll mention there, and that's we just had a discussion of this with a friend as well, is some of them have really harsh experiences, but society now has a tendency to judge harsh experiences. Let's say somebody could have been raped, like a woman could have been raped, or even a man could have been raped when they were younger. And
Mm-hmm.
that, like in society, was like, oh, it's like a let's call it um, rotten apple, right? Since this happened to this person is bad. No, actually, the more intense the experience, the more evolution there is there. And we briefly chat about this. If you look at the most saints in the religion, real saints in the religious world, they're first part of the life was a fucking shit show. Like they were thieves, killers, or they were like went through crazy struggles and etc. So rough experiences in as part of the life is no indication of a rotten apple. It's actually quite the opposite, because soul chose the experience that you either get your shit together post that experience or you don't. And if you don't, you self-select out, right? And if you did, that means you've grown a lot. So that's also very important to recognize, not to judge a person based on their experience.
Interesting. You know, it was the sudden flash that I had when you were talking about saturated lives.
Yeah.
I was thinking back. I'm wow. Remember that time when I was on my knees in the middle of the street with 20 plus LAPD members pointing automatic weapons on me.
Here you
Um,
go.
that was an interesting day. That was an interesting day. Don't recommend it. Don't recommend the automatic weapons. I don't recommend people screaming at the loudspeaker on their car. Get on the fucking ground. I mean, they yell so loud you don't even know what to do. But you know, if you
Yeah.
move the wrong way, you're going to get shot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a great example, right? The saturation of life. And it's like and I guess now, like as we're talking about, I'm like putting a lot of data points together. Some relationships I got into, it was just mismatch. Like I'm sharing all these stories and there's nothing on the other end. And yes, that relationship is still important because and usually those relationships are like, let's call them a shorter term relationship, because
Hmm.
we're still brought together to learn something from each other, and there's still evolution. But that relationship will not become a union for a consistent, continuous evolution. It will be more like a pointed evolutionary interaction.
Yeah. And quickly before I go on to the next thing,
Yeah.
what when we're looking at those quick sort of unions, because I've had those experiences where it's like, you're getting some kind of energy from somebody, but it's like at the same time, the the interaction itself seems almost so surface and vapid in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And is that the super young soul versus the old soul in that sense, or what?
One option could be that. Another option could be there's could be some kind of karmic experience from past life, and it has to be unwinded, and it gets unwinded on one interaction, or it gets unwinded, excuse me, in short relationship. Sometimes it gets unwinded in a marriage. That was my second marriage. There was a karmic contract where we wanted to get married, but we couldn't, and hence we got married in this life. And as soon as we got married, the energy started deflating, and then you're like, wow, everything seemed fine and everything seemed great, but the energy just disappearing, right?
Mm,
So there's and that's why it's the best in those situations is to seek external help of people who are per se intuitive or do this type of work or etc, because they can like really read in between the lines. And it's really hard to read your own situation because you're in the thick of the energies and in the thick of the emotions and thoughts and feelings and etc. So that all distorts the perception and reality. An external person can really point out, hey, this is not really going anywhere, just wrap up this relationship, or hey, this job is not really leading anywhere, that was just for you to learn this energy and you've already learned it, that's why it's stalling and that's why things starting to go downhill, or this location where you're living right now, you're over it, and etc. It's and especially in early stages, even in like we started this conversation as a science of advanced spiritual development, like even in advanced stages of spiritual development, a lot of situations are easier seen by an unbiased observer, which is another person. Like a lot of stuff for myself right now, I can figure out when you uh, the more you become in harmony with everything, the more you see because you don't get triggered. And if you get triggered, then you cannot clearly see because it becomes like the screen that's shaking, right? That you cannot really make out what the picture is. And the more you become at peace, and that's why I keep bringing it harmony in every aspect of life. The more you're in harmony at every aspect of life, the more clearly you see for yourself, and especially more clearly you see for others. Hence, you can guide them. But even with that said, it's like often I call my partners and I was like, "Hey, I'm like super confused in this situation. I'm not sure why Matrix is presenting this situation to me. What I have to do here?" And for them, they're like, "Oh, it's so easy. Look, this is what's
Yeah.
unfolding," because there's no strong emotional interest in the situation, and hence the indication of spiritual development is ability to face any situation from a place of peace and harmony, where you're like, "Oh, interesting. That is what's unfolding." And then you're like, so you don't like get sucked in emotionally, and then you're like, "Okay, what's the constructive and harmonious way to go through this situation?" And you choose constructive and harmonious way to go through that situation. And it's like from outside, it seems like for another person, it should have been like shock, you know? So I guess maybe I'll give a more practical example. A year ago, I was in a relationship where I'd like that relationship to go substantially further than it went, but then it ended abruptly. And in a moment, everybody was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you heartbroken?" And I'm like, "No." And then for longest time, like for a month, I thought there's something wrong with me. But then I'm like, why am I not heartbroken? Oh, I was like, oh, I don't have a charge anymore around like a relationship, like romantic breakups or like charge or like conflicts or etc. To me, it's just an event from which you can learn, from which you can build. And then I was like, well, I guess that's exactly how I needed to unfold. It ended exactly when it ended. Why be heartbroken? I should be happy. I should celebrate because the experience abruptly but harmoniously came to an end. Once the evolutionary experience ended for both, it just ended, and that's fine. And that's an example when you're like, when you develop that inner harmony, you can face almost any situation that way. It doesn't mean you, the thing is, people try to achieve that state by withdrawing from life and society. And that's, by the way, we chatted about a meditation practice that you've recently
Hmm.
experienced. One of
Yep.
side effects of that, people experience that transcendental state, and they get stuck in the transcendental state, and then they start escaping society and being involved in life. They exit their families, they exit their jobs, they exit because transcendental state is blissful, and then they think they've achieved harmony and joy in life. No, they've just minimized interactions with the world. Hence, there is less situations where you can be triggered. And at the end of the day, Matrix still gets to you, right? You can like cancel all your, interaction with family, job, and etc. You'll be sitting in a toilet and the ceiling falls into your head, and then you'll still have to ask yourself, like, "Fuck, what's the lesson here?" Right? So even
Then
if you
you really got to shit or get off the pot, right?
exactly. So hence the metric is of this, coming back to original question, the metric of spiritual development, living a fully saturated wholesome life and being in harmony and peace in every situation and aspect of life.
So I'm going to close this with this one because I think it's a good bookend for what we've been talking about today. From your perspective, and of course, from the perspective of Atman, what are the false paths to spirituality? Like, what are you seeing being pushed the most in society right now? On whether it's in society or on YouTube, that is actually harmful and anti-spiritual, but is being packaged as this pseudo spirituality.
Yeah, this is a excellent question, and my answer will probably be surprising. And the answer is, there's no bad path to spirituality. There's no anti-spirituality.
Oh, okay.
Everything in this life is spirituality. The whole life is meditation. And there's like no wrong path. It's like, as long as a person reflects on the lived events, You can do 7 million sessions of ayahuasca and be fully consumed by reptilians and insectoids. That is also a path. You might not end up where you desired and might get lost, but okay, that this incarnation didn't work out. You go for reloading, and okay, the soul might have got disassembled at the end of the day, and the soul get disassembled. They degrade, and then they ultimately get disassembled, and that is a path as well. Meaning, does it lead you to advanced levels? They don't, but that's how also the creation of this universe is tested if it deserves life and continuation. And part of this universe, unfolding of this universe, some creations are not the best creations and they just get disassembled. It's like there's so many technologies that have been invented that went nowhere. I mean, they just disappear. It's the same concept. It's like for some reason the example of Russian car manufacturing comes to mind. None of those cars really succeeded in the urban terrain,
Oh, come
but
on,
there
the
are a
Lada
couple
is
Russian.
beautiful.
But Lada, Niva Lada, everyone in Montenegro, especially who lives in the mountains, owns one. They succeed in war or rough terrain. That manufacturer never transitioned to urban terrain. Hence it failed, but it succeeded in a segment. Okay, so that survived, but all the other spin-offs that were trying to be urban failed and died. And they're not like, okay, there some of them still exist, but like nobody really buys them. So at the end of the day, every spiritual path is the right path as long as you can figure out the lessons that you were there to derive from, and actually it ends up being to advance you rather than to degrade you. And one more thing I will add that's popping to my mind, where we also started our conversation, and I wanted to touch on this.
Mm.
So this first cohort that got awakened, and their capabilities, spiritual capabilities, got awakened, ability to see, heal, and etc. Subset of those people actually their capabilities were not awakened. They sold their soul to have their capabilities activated. And now these people are very rigid proponents of this works, this doesn't work, and etc. And what I mean by that is there is a whole slew of uh, spiritual practitioners whose capabilities were given to them via contracts with insectoids, reptilians, and greys, and etc. And now, as the planet is increasing in the vibrational level,
Hmm.
um, they're being pushed out of those capabilities because the structures of those civilizations are being picked apart and disassembled because they cannot exist to where the planet is heading. However, those people that seem to the rest of a population very advanced are actually not advanced at all, because they bought their capabilities via selling their soul. And as a result, what's interesting, what we've observed is it's been very difficult working with them and transitioning them, because they're not willing to give away their energetic capabilities and status that is illusionary. Because as soon as they disconnect from those contracts, they lose the capabilities. They lose the healing capability, they lose the seeing capability, they lose access to knowledge and etc., because they've never developed their own capability, they borrowed it. Same as, like, I guess everything is fractal. Most of the Western world right now lives with extensive level of debt. The house they live in, it's not their house, it's bank's house. Let's be honest. So in
Yeah.
spirituality, fractally, it's the same. Huge number of practitioners borrowed their capabilities and are trying to do whatever they can to maintain those structures of low vibration civilizations, because otherwise they lose their capabilities. And hence, where this, before we even turned the recording, where our conversation was, right? We chatted about karma and how annoying karma is. And
Hmm.
karma is like, once again, is kind of like learning to ride a bike. Karma is just interacting with new type of energy that you haven't learned, you don't know how to interact with. So when you're riding a bike first time, you're gonna fall a few times. I remember I decided to make a 90-degree turn at a very high speed and realized that's not how physics of this planet work, and I ended up riding right into a fence, with like my face flying right into between two pieces of the wood, and like I had this like burns here on the face and etc. That was a lesson, right? Where I'm going with this, through karma, we're learning to learn. So as we go through the karma we chose, we learn to interact with new energies. Every next new energy, it's substantially faster because we
Mm.
now know how to evolve. We're learning to evolve. That's a more correct statement. So where I'm going with this, there is a very small subset of spiritual practitioners that have their own real capabilities activated, not via contract. And they did the hard work. Majority of people were looking for shortcuts, including this guy, including majority of people I know. And like, with that said, even though I was looking for shortcuts, I was only willing to sell a little bit of my soul and not fully. So hence I was like, okay, I get a little bit superpower here, a little bit superpower here, but it was not really a superpower. But then somehow intuitively I knew I had to go through that, let's call it hard experience. But in reality, it's just perception that it's hard. But it's like it takes time. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna subscribe to this, cancel this contract that I made, cancel this. I just want to develop, I just want to be sovereign. I want to be independent, and very few people are independent right now in a material world, and very few people are independent or sovereign in a spiritual world as well. And where a lot of our podcasts go to is developing full sovereignty. You're energetically sovereign, you're materially sovereign. And hence, like I recently had a chat with someone. It's like, hey, if you make 5K a month, you should spend 3,500 a month, and you have 1,500 left, and it's like, it's logically it makes sense. But the way most of the society lives, that's not how they live. They make 5K, they spend 7, because then they take more debt against it. And that's exactly the same thing happened in spirituality. Oh, I did, like, let's say 2 years of meditation, I got fed up, and I found an entity that I made a contract with, or I found a Gregor that I made a contract with. And in meditation, it was so slow and painful, but now I can heal people, right? I was like, okay, you can heal people, but all that is disappearing. So everything's getting reset, and everything has to be your own, organic, and everybody has to be sovereign. So, and even those spiritual practitioners, what they did, it's part of their journey. So it's not a run journey. And working with those practitioners, if somebody wants to spiritually grow, you should still work with those practitioners, because there's a lot to learn from them. It's not like they're bad. They're not bad. It's just the choice they made. And that's predominantly this first cohort of practitioners that awakened. And now we see there's this new cohort that's coming in. They're like more sensitive, more conscious, and are less willing, let's say, to take an easy route, or their sensitivity is not allowing to take a turn into a dark corner and make a contract there and pretend they develop the capabilities. They're actually going through a full journey. And there's this new emergence of these practitioners that are like truly, truly powerful. And that's exciting.
Interesting. You know, one thing that you mentioned there, and I just wanted to touch on this because I think it'll be interesting, especially for some of the listeners. You mentioned, because obviously since I've been a child, there's always that concept or that saying like sell your soul, right?
Yeah.
And two quick things with that. What's really going on with that, in a realistic sense, like what is going on when you're selling your soul? And is it is it something that you can buy back, so to speak, and own yourself, or is it something that is then permanently lost?
That's a very big question, and I'm gonna start in slightly different place. First of all, like a lot of people we see who are materially successful in today's world have sold their soul. They've made agreements, and I've consistently seen it. Like different investors made agreements, and the funny thing, sometimes people will say, "Oh, but they didn't know." They know. Most of them know. And like, for example, somebody really wants to be materially successful. And if you really dig in and really ask them many questions, how they became materially successful, I was like, oh, I've really been struggling, everything was failing, and etc. Then I read this book that I can pray to this God, and I started praying to this God. And then there was a moment, I'll give everything to you if I could be wealthy. Many people have done that, and there's like, oh no, I didn't do any, but they know what they've done, and they know the contracts they made. And like given I mentioned to you, we're tracking many people, and we have a very diverse cross section of people. Like I've seen some investors who literally like sold their soul to reptilians, and they're like top investors in specific segment. And i'm
God, I
pretty
got
sure
chills just thinking about that. It's
I'm
weird.
pretty sure they knew exactly what they did. Sometimes they didn't, and they did it in a previous incarnation, and the contract continues here. And the current avatar is a little bit clueless. With that said, you can, in most of the scenarios, if absorption is not high, you can recoup. Meaning sometimes the avatar, and it's not really the soul. Okay, you sell the soul, but then you also sell the avatar. Who is managing the avatar? The soul is managing avatar, or some reptilian, or some insectoid, or etc. So they're like there's so many technicalities at which level you've sold what. Some people fully gave away. You start worshiping Egyptian gods, and you say, I'll do anything for this, and Egyptian god takes over your avatar, and that's it. You've given away the avatar. You haven't necessarily maybe sold your soul, but you've given away the vessel that you use to do evolution on this planet and do other things on this planet. So where I'm going with this, there are many different scenarios, and every scenario is unique. And in most of the scenarios, they're fixable, meaning you can reverse it. With that said, like there are the extreme situations, they're reversible from through a very um, I'm looking for the word. I don't have the English word for that. When basically you create a new contract with the light, let's call it with the light civilizations, but as part
Hmm.
of that contract, your lifestyle becomes um, uh, you have to live a specific type of lifestyle where you fully uh, um, you agree that you will never uh, do the same um, inharmonious behavior ever again. And on top of that, you'll help, let's say, every relative, whenever a relative comes, they'll ask you for help. You have to give them that help. As an example of the new contracts you can make. There's a name for this. It escapes me. It's like kind of like fasting. When you decide to fast, you don't eat food. Here, you basically fast of specific behavior and only do the harmonious version of that behavior. Let's say you've been taken stealing, you do not steal, and you only give away. And if somebody asks for monetary help, you only give, but only if they ask, right? And then you do it for extensive period of time, and that restores the balance. And then the soul fully comes back into avatar and etc. So basically, the avatar has to prove that it deserves of restoring. Plus, then there are different types of things to restore the souls, because when the soul is stolen, no, not stolen, sold, it ends up in so-called what people are afraid of, hell or lower astral, and there it just infinite amount of suffering, which you cannot really escape, because in body you can at least escape the suffering by exiting the body. Whereas there, you're already in an energetic world, you have nowhere to escape to. So that's okay. The hell, paradise and hell exist on this planet, but then the hell and paradise exist in an energetic world as well. So, so then you have to do specific things to get your soul out of those lower vibrational layers of universe or consciousness. So there are many different unique situations, and every situation has to be treated individually. And just to summarize that, yes, it can, most of the scenarios can be reverted, but not all.
Wow. Okay. Whew. Well, that's it for this episode.
Phil, we've covered so many different topics. I don't even know what to call this episode.
Life.
Yeah, the game of life. Oh,
Yes.
all right.
School of life. All
Yeah,
right. Well,
it was fun as
looking
usual.
forward back on track. Have my new Nikolai cable.
Yeah.
So ready to go. Looking forward to next week.
See you next week.